Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got Alan Saunders on today, and I want to talk about the rumor about the Steelers maybe being in on Chris Olave. Will they be? Who knows? But how serious should the Steelers be in a wide receiver trade market? We talk about that and answer more of your questions here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders. He's back from SteelersNow.com. Alan, you know, it was a typical Friday. Woke up, did some work. Did some stretching, did some exercises, and then Pittsburgh Twitter exploded because someone said that the Steelers could be interested in Chris Olave, and then everyone's like, they're going to get Chris Olave, they're going to go get Chris Olave, and of course, that's not happening, but from what I understand, when I did ask around, I did hear that, like, hey, they're making preliminary calls about a lot of guys. So if you hear a random name pop up, it's probably just them just checking hey, what would that cost? Just to gauge interest, say, across the board. And this is part of the preliminary research you do before you make a move, so that you can understand that. And that move could come 6 months. It could come never. It could come in 2 weeks. Who knows? But that's all this was. Alan, what was your response to how that developed? And how serious do you think the Steelers should be in play for the wide receiver trade market right now?
Oh, the Steelers are the 1,000-pound gorilla in the wide receiver trade market. Every wide receiver who is available, they're calling about. Every wide receiver who might be available, they're calling about. Every wide receiver whose GM has once considered the idea of trading. Omar Khan has called that guy probably 3 times to ask about him. Yes, they're interested in there are 32 NFL teams, so 31 other NFL teams. So times 2 on the depth chart, there are 62 other wide receivers that are at every position that the Steelers have called upon. Yes, they want them all. They're going to try to lose every possible solution to this wide receiver problem, because the free agent market, and the solution is not there. Let me just say that. So yeah, they're trying to make a trade. Absolutely.
So clearly they're in the market, like they're asking, but that does not mean imminent trade incoming.
Oh, in fact, I would think the opposite. Like trades don't get made in May very often. In fact, trades get made in May almost never. We should be thinking June 1st would be the very soonest we should expect the Steelers to make a trade, because then the trading team can offset the dead cap hit over 2 seasons instead of 1 season when they trade away a player. So that's the absolute earliest you should be thinking. And even then, I'd be pretty suspicious of that date, personally. I would think after minicamp, sometimes trades are made. Teams get a good look at their rookies and would say, hey, we really got something in this young guy. This is a veteran maybe we can afford to be without, things like that. And then after that, you're looking at cut day. And that's when the Steelers traded for Vance McDonald. That's when the Steelers traded for Ryan Shazier. So, this could be
traded for who?
You're talking about until September once again.
Wait, traded for who? You said Ryan Shazier.
Ryan Switzer. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, am I drunk right now? What just happened? But Ryan Switzer, I got you now. But I agree with you. Like, if a trade is coming, it is not coming for some time. Unless something crazy opens up and a team is just like, we got to dump this guy. Steelers we'll give him to you for whatever, and the Steelers are like, yep, that's a sign to them. But that rarely happens. So that's the case there. Now here's my thing though, Alan. I'm of the opinion that like Chris Olave, let's play with that name for a little bit. Guy has some concussion history. They'd have to pay him soon. I'm not 100% sure that's the move that they would go for. Unless he was at a complete clean bill of health, maybe. And then you'd be looking at what would future contracts be like? Because I do think again, like I do think that part of they would, if George Pickens was the guy and they had still traded for DK Metcalf, I do think they have the space to sign a second really good wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf, which is why I was willing to believe there was a chance that they kept George Pickens if they thought he could work with their organization. But now that he's gone and they don't have to pay him right now, and again, the money isn't for this year. It's for next year, where right now they're slotted to have an approximate $96.6 million in cap space, and that number's probably going to go up by the end of this season because the cap number's been growing every year anyways. And you can factor in TJ Watt taking a chunk out of that and maybe some other signings, but there's going to be space to sign another major player with that money. And wide receiver seems like the place to do it. I'm of the opinion that if the right deal doesn't come around for the guy that you think is the long-term guy, just sign one of these free agents for right now, the Keenan Allens, the Amari Coopers. It'll work fine then, and then reapproach this later. But I do think that they should be in the market for looking for that guy that they think they can pair with DK Metcalf to be a nice 1-2 punch at wide receiver. Because again, that's what I thought could have been really explosive, really fun with him and Pickens together. RIP weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just don't think that any of the free agent options are like legitimate wide receiver twos on the outside at this point in their career. Yeah. Not that I think a lot of the players that are going to end up being available in the trade market are either. Like it's very well possible that between now and the start of the regular season, not a single starting wide receiver will be traded. In fact, that's probably more likely than not, right? I mean, but like, yeah, I don't really think that there's an obvious answer here for the Steelers. I do think there are situations where you can look at some guys and say why they may want out or the team may be willing to trade them. I mean, obviously with Olave, the issue isn't Olave, it's the Saints are just going in the
they're cap hell.
Right. And so like, but he's young enough and they already picked up his option that like, hey, they're going to go draft a quarterback highly next year, or maybe Tyler Shough works out and they don't have to, but either way, they're going to need a wide receiver to go with that quarterback. Yeah. And they'd be selling super low on him right now because of the concussions that you mentioned. Like that just doesn't seem like it's very likely, but there are certainly situations. I think you look at Green Bay, they've got too many pieces for the roles that I think those players envision for themselves. I think New England has like certainly not a single star wide receiver on the team, but like a whole bunch of wide receiver 2/3 types that probably have too many of them for the roles those players envision themselves having. So I think it's possible that they can end up with a wide receiver in the trade market. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that like just plugging a hole with DJ Chark solves anything. Like I just, I mean, I'd almost just rather see what Rock Taylor can do at that point. Like I don't know. Like I don't have a lot of faith in the abilities of any of these guys or free agents, specifically to play outside. I think they like Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson as slot players and have two really good options in the slot. The need is on the outside, and I mean I don't think that Robert Woods is the answer, but like they have the break glass in case of emergency answer already. They don't just need to sign a guy to sign a guy. So I'd be just trying to play the trade market out until the end of the process and see where that leads you.
I think that's something that's there. The one name keeps getting floated out there is Tyreek Hill. It seems like every time that there's a Tyreek Hill float. Right. So like that's what I'm saying. Like there's these big names that you're going to hear and that you're going to have thrown out there. Don't buy into it. But like the thing with the trade market, it is very tough to judge when and where someone's gonna be available. Like for example, like I do like there's times where I'm like, hey, I think this could fit. Like years ago on the show when the Jaguars looked like, I'm like, hey, they're gonna cut. What was the linebacker that came here from the Jaguars? Miles Jack. They're gonna cut Miles Jack, and that would be an ideal signing for the Steelers, and it worked out. Like that was just putting 2 and 2 together. But like will certain receivers who are on their rookie contracts be able to sign with their teams moving forward? Like, a guy that a lot of Pittsburgh fans might know, Jordan Addison. This is his third year of his deal, which means at the end of this season, they got to decide on his fifth-year extension. He's a pretty good receiver. I think that the Vikings would agree to that, but they're paying Justin Jefferson. They're paying a lot of other guys. Could they be in a situation where they're like, oh, I can't afford, because they're a team that has a lot of cap space problems. Now, that foreseeably could be a move that the Steelers might entertain. But again, down the line, like teams exploring like, okay, you know what? Long term, we can't make this work, so we're going to get rid of this guy, pick up something else, and make that work. That's the move I ultimately think the Steelers will eventually get into. Again, unless like someone gets cut that's insane, or someone becomes available that we just didn't anticipate. But I think the big Steelers wide receiver trade move that people are going to clamor about for the next 3 months, and I'm going to keep posting the meme and the next day and the next day. I don't think it's going to happen until another team is willing to come off of a guy, and there's other dominoes that have to fall for everyone to even be in that position.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, we saw this last year. I remember last offseason, everybody was talking last offseason when the Steelers obviously needed a wide receiver then, similarly to the situation now, was, look at the Titans, Treylon Burks. He's not going to start that. And then they had two guys get injured. And then it was like, oh, never mind. It's not, just because somebody looks like they might be available now, these teams are going to hold on to that depth right up until they can't anymore, which is why that Miles Jack trade happened during a preseason game. That is the time frame I would think that you're most likely looking at the Steelers acquiring a wide receiver.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Again, we're talking about summertime, not springtime. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to take some more of your questions on the Locked On Steelers call-in line. We'll do that here with Alan Saunders, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live throughout the game. They have player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays that fans have found more ways to win than ever before by playing smart to win big. The Knicks and the Pacers face off in the East, while the Timberwolves and the Thunder throw down in the West. Stars like Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, SGA, and Tyrese Halliburton are all sure to light up box scores and win people plenty of money on their prop bets. If you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. It's a great deal to take advantage of during the NBA playoffs. Again, new to FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com to sign up today. Place your first $5 bet or more, and if it hits, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to some of these questions. As always, you can call in with 412-223-6644. And yes, I know George Pickens is still in the picture. I'm going to change it soon. I keep forgetting because I got a lot of other stuff I got to get done right now. But we're going to get it in there anyway.
Talking about him, so, I mean.
Yeah, it's true. We're going to keep, his name's going to be said probably once on this show every day until training camp, just because it's the dead season. But anyways, let's get to some of these questions. Again, call in 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. This one comes from Martinsburg, West Virginia. Steven, take it away.
Hey, Chris. This is Steven calling from Martinsburg, West Virginia. I just had a question regarding George Pickens since we traded him today. Still kind of in shock about it. I was curious to think that or I wanted your opinion on something. Do you think that with the amount of draft capital we have next year, would it be possible to get our franchise quarterback and then also possibly trade up high into the second round, or possibly even trade back up into the first round to take one of these higher end receivers? I just don't think you can compete in an NFL. You can't compete in the NFL anymore if you don't have more than one solid wideout. So that's just my question. I appreciate your time. God bless. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Stephen. As always, call 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get you on the show just like we did Stephen. Okay, Alan, before we get to the second part of his question about trading again back up to try to get a high-end wide receiver in the draft class, I wanted to address the whole trade-up thing for the quarterback thing. And I know that, some people are probably like, Chris, you talk about it. Listen, I hear you. But there's a lot of people who still think it's impossible to do this. And so I'm going to break it down a little bit. The Steelers don't have to trade up for the top 3 pick to get the quarterback unless they feel like they need to. And if they do, there's extra. They can get involved with that. I think the sweet spot for the Steelers would be trading up to the bottom of the top 10, maybe even just outside the top 10 for a quarterback that can be drafted there. And I don't think that that's unreasonable to look at quarterbacks in that range and think that you can get a quarterback that can be a franchise guy and be maybe even the best franchise guy. I mean, when you look at Ben Roethlisberger, he was the 3rd quarterback in that draft class, and he was 11th. And yes, that was just that was 21 years ago. But even recently, like if you look at in 2016 and 2015, when there were back-to-back years where the quarterback was the 1st and 2nd position picked in both of those seasons, and the year before that in 2014 he was the 3rd overall quarterback. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you'll never get a franchise quarterback outside of the top 3." Josh Allen went at 7 the next year. Lamar Jackson went at 32. The year after that, the year before that, actually, I skipped the year. That was the year after in 2018. In 2017, Mahomes went 10. Watson went 12. These things happen. And even more recently, when you look at a draft, I think it was 2020, when they had Jordan Love at 26, Jalen Hurts at 53. There's going to be guys that I think are available, Alan. I'm not saying 26 and 53, but the guy I keep my eye on right now is LaNorris Sellers. If he's available in the draft class, I think that there's a chance, because he's young enough and because there's going to be other big name guys, he might be that guy that's available in that range where the Steelers say, hey, that's the guy we're trading up to get. He's the perfect fit for what we want long-term, talent-wise, and not selling the farm to go up and get him.
Yeah, I mean, like, Sellers is a good target. I think there are a half a dozen players right now that look like first-round draft picks at quarterback. Those players will not all go in the top 10. That's almost certain. There will be bad teams that already have their quarterback. I mean, look at this. How many times did the Bears pick the top when they already had a quarterback? They traded out once, I think there certainly will be another team or two that end up there that already has their quarterback. And so I don't think that the Steelers will have to get inside the top 10 to get a really good quarterback. They can. They already have what they need in terms of draft capital to get inside the top 10, assuming they're not picking 30th or something like that,
right.
Which I don't think anyone's predicting right now. But yeah, I mean, I think, in fact, like the idea that it's impossible, I think it is extremely unlikely that the Steelers will be unable to draft a quarterback in the first half of the first round of the 2026 NFL draft. I would bet my house on it that is going to happen. It is almost certain that the Steelers will draft a quarterback, and they will do so with a top 15 pick in the 2026 NFL draft. You can almost guarantee it at this point.
Book it.
It's going to happen. And there will be, and it will not be some hideous reach. There will be a player who deserves to be taken at that slot available to them. Whether it's Sellers, whether it's Nico, whether it's Drew Allar, whether it's one of these other guys who are sort of like the thing about the first thing I say when there are 6 first-round quarterbacks, someone says they all won't be there. I'm like, yeah, they probably won't. I'm almost sure that those 6 quarterbacks all won't be there. But there's just as likely that some players from the next group move up that there is that no one was talking about Cam Ward as pick 1 of 1 this time last year.
They were not.
There's a half a dozen more players that could play their way into that conversation. Yeah, sure. I'm sure some of those guys will not end up there. Nico will decide that UCLA is actually not it. Like that seems like it may happen, okay? And he can go there and throw for 5,000 yards too. It just there's plenty of opportunities for guys to work their way into that spot, just as there are opportunities for guys to play their way out. I think the Steelers are in very, very, very good position to get a quarterback in the first round of the 26th NFL draft. Not only do I think that, I am sure that is their absolute intention, and they're not thinking of doing anything else with that draft pick other than going up to get a quarterback. That is the plan.
I'm right with you there. Okay. So let's look at this then. They do that. What's the likelihood of them trying to be aggressive again for another player in that same draft class? Because I imagine if you're trading up and you're trading, let's say, from the 20 range into the 10 range, you're giving up a first, a second, and a third, probably, maybe even a little bit more than that. If you do all that, even if it's all this season, first, second, third, you still got 2 third-round picks. Do you see the Steelers as being a team that would be aggressive to try to do that, kind of like how the Texans were when they got C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson in the same stroke?
Yeah, I mean, they have a big need of corner too. They just did a 1-year stopgap thing with Darius Slay. I think one of the big things that the Steelers are going to have to do next offseason is that they're going to have to be aggressive in deciding before free agency, okay, look, we probably only have one more premium draft pick in this draft after trading up for a quarterback. Like they may leave themselves with enough for to keep one of those thirds. Okay, They maybe could keep 2 of those thirds, but I think probably not. Okay, and so you're gonna have your first, which is gonna be a quarterback. You have one. Which of those positions is going to be better able to be addressed with another day 2 pick? With a day 2 pick, is it corner or is it wide receiver? And then go out in free agency and line up the other guy and nail it ahead of time. I think that is going to be one of the most important parts of this next offseason. If they look at I'm very well versed in the first round top 15 quarterbacks. I cannot sit here on May 19th, 2025 and tell you what the day 2 wide receivers and corners are going to look like in next year's draft. Okay, I can't. No one can. But that's going to be their job, is to see which of those positions is going to end up available to us, which of those positions is going to be deeper. So if we got to start a 3rd-round pick, do we want it to be a corner or do we want it to be a wide receiver and then go make an aggressive move in free agency? I also do expect them to be aggressive in free agency next year. You mentioned the cap space, but also, like, I think they made a very intentional series of steps this offseason to preserve those comp picks to trade up in the draft. I do not think that will be part of the process next offseason. I expect them to be aggressive in free agency next offseason and not worry about the comp pick situation. One of the reasons why trading George Pickens was so attractive to this team is that, like, people say, oh, you can just wait next. They ain't trying to get no comp picks next year. They're trying to spend money in free agency next year. So, like, I think there's the process. So will that be wide receiver? Will that be corner? I think it just depends on what they think the board is going to look as of next January, when they're making those plans. I think it's hard to pick that out ahead of time.
Point being, it takes time. And I posted this on Twitter. I was like, I like LaNorris Sellers. I think he's the guy that right now, like 11 months way ahead of time, that could be there and be the right mix of being valuable enough for them to get, but not too valuable enough that someone takes super early. But again, I'm projecting way out in advance. That's what the Steelers would be doing right now. However, when you have the time over the season, when you have your whole scouting department looking across the country, watching college football play out, you're going to start to see that, and then you're going to develop your big board. And then come January, come February, when you have that sense of, all right, this is the strengths of this class, that's when you make the move, because that's exactly what they did when they went and got DK Metcalf. And Tomlin basically admitted it when we were talking to him after the trade, when he was saying, like, look, obviously, like, not even after the trade, after the draft, like, obviously, like, look, you make moves in free agency to prepare for the draft. So if they're making big moves in a position, maybe that says that they don't believe in that draft class. So they don't have to commit to that plan now. They just got to see how it plays out. But I'm with you. I think that whatever position that they go gung-ho with in free agency, that'll be the position they feel like is the weaker on day 2 for next year's draft class, and it'll be the position that they don't address that much in free agency that they do get aggressive with on that. And who knows? Maybe they do trade, like, if they trade away a first, second, a third, or first, second, and 2/3, maybe they trade a third and a fourth, or a third and a future pick to get back up into the second to get that one guy that they think is that person or whatever. But I'm with you. I think there's going to be a lot more aggressiveness from the Steelers once they get this quarterback moving play, because this is the big thing that they're building everything around right now, is trying to get this right.
Yeah, and I think the one way the process that we just kind of laid out could get upset is if this offseason, that wide receiver does become available. Just because they don't have that Darius Slay kind of player at wide receiver this year, if Omar Khan gets the offer to trade for a bona fide number 2 wide receiver for a 3rd round pick this offseason, he's just going to have to make that choice now and say, okay, there, we just traded the pick we were going to use on a wide receiver. Now it's got to be corner next free agency. We got to cross our fingers and hope one's there.
Which is why I feel like patience is the key right now, unless it's like your guy. Like if it's a guy that you've loved throughout his NFL career, you loved him in the draft process, you just couldn't get him, and then all of a sudden becomes available, that's different. But again, make it be your guy. We're gonna take another quick break. When we come back, we got more questions, and this one's on Will Howard. Seems to be the fan favorite of late. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter with Alan Saunders here, answering more questions here on the Locked On Steelers hotline. You can call us at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute. We're going to take another question here. This one comes from Michael out in Concord, California, asking about Will Hyde.
Hey, Chris, this is Michael from Concord, California. Question about Will Howard. I know we're really thinking that he's not going to be a starter, but if we come into a scenario where he does start, and let's say he balls out, he just, he is serviceable, what does that mean for next year in that 2026 draft where we're thinking that we're looking for a quarterback? But what if Will Howard proves to be the guy? Where do we pivot? Do we pivot? Do we still look for first-round talent at quarterback? I don't know. I'm curious to know what you think. Love the show. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the call. 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Alan, these people are going to make me turn heel on Will Howard. You got to understand, if you watch this show throughout the draft process, I was like saying like, hey, Will Howard in the 4th, that seems like a great move. Will Howard, I really like this Will Howard kid. The more I watch his tape, I think he's pretty solid. He'd be a good Mason Rudolph backup. I said that. Mason Rudolph backup. You and I talked about that specific comparison multiple times before, during, after the draft class. And now people think that Will Howard is Jesus. And like, I'm not saying he couldn't turn into a surprise guy. There's always the shot. I always root for someone to overcome the odds and beat everyone that's ever doubted them when it comes to athleticism. But Alan, I think we got to chill when looking at could this guy become this and do that? Could he? You know what? Yeah, absolutely. If Will Howard, first of all, finds a way to get into a game, let alone plays well, but finds a way to get into a game, that means a lot of other crazy things have happened to this season. But if he finds a way to get into the game and then he turns out to be a superstar quarterback, then yeah, sure, that'll change my perspective. But the number of things that have to happen, like you remember Doctor Strange in Infinity War when he was like, I just explored 3,600,000,000,000 different scenarios, and there's one of them where we beat Thanos. It might be more that Will Howard becomes the superstar quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers as a rookie.
Well, first of all, I have no idea what you're talking about because I don't watch comic book movies. I'm sure that is going
lame
to endear me to a large.
You are lame and a loser. Never mind.
That's the opposite of what we called people who didn't have comic books.
Yeah,
it was the other way around. People with the comic books are lame losers. Yeah, okay. This is not happening. I hate the thing I hate the most in the world is to say that something that is possible is not going to happen, because anything is theoretically possible. But like the peak potential of Will Howard falls short of the level of play that you would need to see from a quarterback to not address it in next year's draft with the first overall pick, with the first round pick. It's not plausible. It's certainly not likely. And even if, okay, So, like, here's a scenario that I think is possible. Okay. Aaron Rodgers either doesn't show up or he rips his Achilles again or whatever, somehow ends up not being a factor. Okay. Mason Rudolph goes out there, plays and whether he's hurt or whether Mike Tomlin just wants to make a change, we see Will Howard for 3 or 4 games at the end of the year. Okay. I don't think that's likely, but I think that's possible. And even if those 3 or 4 games, Will Howard is so good, like the best you could possibly imagine in your head, Will Howard being, the Steelers should absolutely still go trade up to get a quarterback in the first round of next year's draft. It's just completely irrelevant because, like, the best you can imagine Will Howard being is like a top, like the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. Like, it's just not good enough to pass up on a very deep, very strong quarterback class. What it does give you is a really good backup. What it does give you is a potential trade chip. And, like, if the unthinkable happens, if your 1 in 10 million scenario happens, then you're just the San Francisco 49ers and you trade the quarterback you drafted for a 3rd-round pick and you start your 6th rounder, 7th rounder in their case. But, like, guys, this is not going to happen. I don't know. Like it's just not going to happen. I don't know how else to say it.
No, that's where I'm at. And again, this is not us hating on Will Howard. This is not us saying that he can't do it. Because everyone's going to say, well, John Gruden said he's Josh Allen. Okay. Like,
I don't have anything like Josh Allen.
First of all, yes, builds like when you height and weight and running speed, sure, but there's a lot of other things that have to happen there to get him there. But all I am saying is, and if you really are a Will Howard fan or Will Howard, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm not going to say Will Howard until he makes a Will Howard like play. He's Will Howard until he makes a big play. When he makes a big throw in preseason, even in preseason, he'll be Will Howard. I can give him a Will Howard whenever he makes a play like that. That'll be a thing we do here on Locked On Steelers. But what I'm saying here is let him be the 6th-round quarterback with no expectations, because that's the fun thing. Because now he's coming in like with Kenny Pickett, there were expectations. There was just crazy with every pass. I remember when Mitch Trubisky threw an incomplete pass in the first 7-on-7. What's it? The 2-yard thing that they did. 7 shots. And the first 7 shots, Mitch Trubisky threw a pass was incomplete. And someone from the fans said, boo, put in Kenny Pickett. Now, someone's probably going to steal that for Will Howard if Aaron Rodgers throws an incomplete pass. But like, let Will Howard enjoy. It's like letting your kid enjoy being a kid. You know, let him grow. Let him figure out things on his own. Let him find his own legs. And then if the morning comes where Aaron Rodgers is out, and Mason Rudolph has been hit over his head with his own helmet again by Myles Garrett, and he can't go, and Will Howard just happens to be the guy, and he lights it up, that'll be an amazing story. But let that go. Don't put the pressure on it now to force it to have to happen, because then you're going to feel so disappointed if he's not the savior. And I think that the whole point is they drafted him to have a chance at a bridge guy down the line. That's what he is. That's what I said was going to be available in this draft class, not the franchise guy. Next year, those guys project to be maybe more of those franchise guys. And that's what you bet on. But like, it would be like betting on not odd numbers. Like if you were to play roulette and you were to pick numbers and or colors and everything, I wouldn't say it would be like picking odds or evens. It might be picking like, hey, I'm gonna bet on every multiple of 10 on the thing, or multiple of 5. I actually don't even play roulette, so I don't even know how many numbers are on a roulette wheel. But like
36. There's 36 plus 2 zeros.
36 plus 2 zeros. All right, let's say multiples of 6. I'm gonna put a bet on multiples of 6 to hit. That's like betting on a quarterback class that projects to be a lot better than it is this year. But betting on Will Howard to hit, it would be like betting on 00. And it's just like, you might hit it, and if you do, you're gonna feel amazing. But the likelihood of you hitting it is just very low.
Actually, the odds are way worse than just betting on 36 in roulette. Derek Bell for SteelersNow.com yesterday morning wrote an article about just these sort of odds of a day 3 quarterback. There have been 58 quarterbacks drafted in the 4th round or later over the last decade, and only 2 have been starters. So yeah, I mean, that's just starter. That's not franchise quarterback. That's just starting quarterback. I think, look, Skylar Thompson's played 10 NFL games and made 4 starts. I think it's more likely that Will Howard gets cut for Skylar Thompson than starts a game for the Steelers this year.
Whoa.
He's a 6th-round pick. He is not even a coin flip to make the team. Like,
I'm trying to protect you, man. I'm trying to protect you, man. Don't say that Will Howard's going to get cut. They're going to come after my show. They're going to come after you. They're going to find out where you live.
That is the facts of a 6th-round pick, is that he is more likely to not make the team than to start for the team this year. That's true of Will Howard and every other 6th-round pick out there that's not in some incredibly fortuitous situation.
And again, I think he'll make the team. And I think, but I also think that people need to relax when it comes to this situation. The Steelers have a long-term plan. A 6th-round pick at quarterback will not change it unless it is the Tom Brady of picks. And it took 60+ years in the NFL for that to even happen. So anyways, this has been the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
You can send all your hate mail for me not thinking that Will Howard is a starting quarterback, and also the comic books and comic book movies are.
I'm coming for you there.
At @Saunders_PGH on every social media platform. And also, while you're doing that, just go over to SteelersNow.com and click on Derek's article and all my stuff so I can get paid while you're trolling me. And, of course, you can find my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, my name is Christopher Carter. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias, all the same handles, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow with another episode of the Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.